The views and opinions expressed on this program are those of the participants and do not reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
BronxNet. Your voice, your views, your vision.
Coming up, so you think ferries are one of the safest forms of transportation? Well, that is not always the case. A recent ferry accident off the coast of Battery Park City left many from New York and New Jersey injured. Who is to blame, and what are the rights of those who've been injured? We talk with an attorney who will provide us with some much-needed information. Plus, we will meet with one organization that uses legal resources to offer hope and strength to communities throughout the city. As you can see, we have a lot to get to, so stay right here because today's verdict starts right now. Welcome to today's verdict, the show that gives you your legal rights and options. I'm your host and trial attorney for the next 30 minutes, David Lesh. The New York Legal Assistance Group has been serving New Yorkers since 1990, offering comprehensive legal services to those who cannot afford legal representation. Organizations like NYLAG provide legal guidance for those in need of direct representation, case consultation, advocacy, community education, and more. Joining us on today's show to tell us more about the New York Legal Assistance Group is co-founder and president Yisrael Shulman. Mr. Shulman has seen the organization grow from just 2 attorneys to 8 legal divisions here in New York, and we are lucky to have him on set with us today. Mr. Shulman, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me, David.
It's a pleasure. It's a cold day, but you made it. Tell us a little bit about the organization.
Thank you. So the organization started in 1990, as you mentioned, and it provides free civil legal services for both the working poor as well as the very poor in all different areas of civil law. As you know, as a trial attorney, if there's a criminal case, you're entitled, according to our United States Constitution, to a free lawyer to help you in those matters. But if it's a civil case, let's say it's a matrimonial case, a family law case, a consumer case, or an immigration case, there's no federal constitutional right to a free lawyer. So organizations like the New York Legal Assistance Group, NYLAG, were started in order to provide and to bridge that gap so that the poor and the near poor and the working poor can have access to free civil legal services.
And how did you get involved with it? Did any particular experience that made you start the organization or get involved with the organization?
So my background is I was teaching at the Cardozo Law School. And in the Cardozo Law School, I helped and I worked in a clinical program called the Bet-Tzedek Legal Services Program, run by a phenomenal woman named Toby Golick. And in that program, it was a clinical program teaching law students how to represent low-income individuals in all types of public benefits areas. I saw that it was a great program, but it was very limited in terms of the numbers of cases that the law students could handle. So we decided together with others, we created the New York Legal Assistance Group to be able to expand and to help tens of thousands of individuals. Just last year alone, we helped over 57,000 individuals throughout the city.
Well, the civil area covers a wide raft of areas. So let's talk about what exactly you will help with. You'll help with immigration, am I correct?
Yes, both documented and undocumented immigrants can receive free legal help. We help in domestic violence cases. We help in consumer cases. We have a very robust mortgage foreclosure program. We help with all areas of public benefits. We help with uninsurance cases. Really any civil area, housing cases, landlord-tenant cases, health law cases.
Now, when somebody has an issue, do they call you on the phone and then you'll refer them on to attorneys, or do you actually have your own attorneys who are working with you to help each individual?
So both. We have a paid legal staff, which is about 180 paid workers at the New York Legal Assistance Group, but we utilize the services of over 50 law firms, which provide over 800 volunteers on a regular basis to pick up cases free of charge so that we can expand the number of eligible individuals we can help each year.
All right, let's talk about, for instance, immigration, because I know a lot of the viewers are looking to try and become legal. Let's say somebody's watching right now and they're, they want to get a green card. They want to really, get the process going. What's the first thing they do when they see somebody from your organization? What is asked of them?
Okay, the first thing they should do is call. Okay. We do intake 5 days a week, 9 to 5. All they have to do is dial our number, 212-613-5000, and ask for a legal case consultation. Again, the number is 212-613-5000. From that, a paralegal or an attorney will take a detailed questionnaire. What are the issues? And then it will be referred to the appropriate attorney. In the example that you just cited, it would be referred to an immigration lawyer that would explain to the individual all of their options and whether or not we could provide those options. And if we can't provide those options, who could provide?
Now, there are always filing fees in any courthouse. There's always there's always a time where the court is going to ask you to pay certain monies. Who pays the monies for those individuals who come to see you? Do you foot the bill for that, or do they actually pay for that?
So again, an excellent question. All of the legal work is completely free. If it's a court fee or an immigration fee and the individual is low income or doesn't have any money, we apply to the court for fee waivers so that they don't have to pay any of the fees in order to file the cases.
And is that usually granted, or do you have to negotiate
It's
that?
on a case-by-case basis, but if somebody truly has no income or very low income or no money in the bank, the courts or the immigration courts often will waive fees.
All right, let's talk about foreclosures, because that is still hitting home to so many people. You're losing your home, you're losing your apartment, and you own it, and they come to you. What do you do usually?
Well, first we assess the case and we determine, is this somebody who's eligible for a mortgage modification?
Right, because if they're too far underwater, there's no point, I guess.
Or if they don't have income. If you don't have any income whatsoever, a mortgage modification, meaning to adjust the mortgage and to lower the principal or to change the rate, really doesn't help much because you don't have any income to pay the mortgage. But if the mortgage is too high and you do have income, we may be able to get a mortgage modification. If you have no income, we may be able to negotiate with the bank to either forego collecting interest or principal for a period of time until you're back on your feet working, or we may be able to negotiate with the bank to reduce principal amounts or to extend the number of payments.
Has NILAG been successful in that area?
We've been very successful. We operate out of all 5 civil courts. We actually have an office. We're right close to Lehman office near the Bronx Court. So we see clients, in the courthouses and lots of different places. I should have mentioned that you, in addition to calling for intake, you can also visit any of our intake sites, and you can see our website. Our website is www.nilag.org, and you'll see all of our 59 sites where you can also access free civil legal services.
So you can walk into a site. In other words, you can find out if one is in your area, just go in there and then fill it out from there. Is that?
Absolutely. You can either call the central number that I gave before, or you can walk into any of our intake sites.
All right. Family law, because a lot of the viewers have issues there. What types of services do you help?
We prioritize working in domestic violence cases. So if you're a victim of domestic violence and you contact NILAG, you receive assistance because that's a priority for the organization. But we also do both contested and uncontested divorces. That's important because lots of groups out there and organizations will do uncontested divorces where there's no fight between the husband and the wife over issues like custody or support. But contested divorces is really very difficult in order to obtain necessary representation. So we do those as well.
And what do you find in the family court area that you seem to be helping most with? Is it with the domestic violence area, or is it
Orders of protection?
Orders of protection.
We have offices in all 5 family courts, so the clerks in the family court will actually refer clients directly to our offices in the family courts, and we, utilizing law students and volunteers and paid staff, actually will appear before the court at least the first 2 times before the judge with the victim.
And the law students have permission, I assume, to be able to go before the courts. Am I correct?
Exactly. We have something called a student practice order, which allows law students to work under our supervision.
Okay, I'm gonna stop right there because we have to take a quick break. But coming up, we take a look at our city's ferries. Are they safe? We'll be right back.
G-Morning, sunshine. Wakey, wakey. Text me. Are your parents home later? We can hang. LUV love you. JK. Holla back. Holla back. Holla back.
Are you with your friends? That's lame.
We're in a huge fight right now. XO.
What'd you dream about?
Something I did. Are you on your way to the
I'm
mall?
lonely.
Nude pics. Send me some. Text me.
Did you find the flashlight and the batteries?
Yes.
Did you make sure we're not missing anything in the first aid kit?
Yup.
Did you go through the plan with the kids again?
Yes.
The more you prepare today, the more you'll be able to reduce the devastating effects of a tornado, an earthquake, a power outage, or any other disaster.
Be free. Nice, Dad. Nice, Dad. Nice.
Charles!
Nice, Dad.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. There are thousands of siblings in foster care who'll take you just as you are.
Welcome back. I'm your host, David Lesh. We at Today's Verdict want to hear from you. So send us your questions or comments, davidlesh@bronxnet.org. I'll post a comment on our Facebook page at facebook.com/today'sverdict. Over the past 10 years, New York City has seen its fair share of ferry accidents that have left several injured. Many believe faulty ferry operation is to blame. Take, for instance, the 2003 Staten Island crash that killed 11 and left several injured. Or just a few weeks ago, when the Sea Streak ferry crashed into Pier 11 in Lower Manhattan, injuring 90 passengers. When a passenger is injured in a boating or ferry incident, the law can be confusing. Who's ultimately responsible? When should you seek legal representation? Well, on today's show, we talk with an expert to help navigate the legal waters. Joining us on today's show is attorney Michael Lamonsoff of the Law Office of Michael Lamonsoff. His office's experience in the representation and settlement recovery for victims of boat and ferry crashes, and is here to help us out with the law in this area. Counsel, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, David.
All right, listen, it's cold and it's a nice day to talk a little bit about some ferries, but I always thought ferries were one of the safest modes of transportation, but that doesn't look like that's always the case.
Well, you really hit it. The last 10 years has been a proliferation of ferry use in and around New York, and it's become less and less safe. The New York Bay area, the Hudson River in particular, has become extremely dangerous because there's been a proliferation of ferries and boats on the Hudson.
Is it a speed issue? Is it a congestion issue? Is it a weather issue? What's going on?
It's really all those combined because of the opening of new buildings in New Jersey, because they're using the ferry. The ferry use has gone way up. Because there's a lot more commercial use of the Hudson, there's just a lot more danger. There's less regulation than there was 10, 15 years ago, and there's far more accidents happening because there is no regulation. Really, there is no regulation on the Hudson.
Well, let's talk about from a negligence point of view as a trial attorney.
Sure.
Are you looking to show that the operation of the boat is an issue? In other words, the person who's actually driving it. Is it that the boat itself may have some issues as well, which is really maybe more of a product liability issue? Mm-hmm. Where do you usually, which way are you heading as an attorney when you take these cases?
Well, you really have to do your investigation. Okay. You have to take a look to see whether or not the pilots of these ferries were operating in a non-negligent fashion, and a lot of times we find that they're not. We find that they're overwhelmed. They have to meet certain schedules and standards. And some of them are not sleeping correctly, not getting the right amounts of sleep. So it can be the operation. Also, a lot of these ferries are very old and they're not being maintained correctly.
Well, do the drivers actually have to be licensed themselves? And I would assume they need some type of boating license, a power squadron course at the very least or something.
Well, you know about that.
Well, at least I've taken a power squadron course.
Yes.
Doesn't mean I'm any good at driving a boat, but I actually got that little power squadron license.
Right. That's only one course given by the Coast Guard, and that's not really that's not applicable to captains. Captains of these type of vessels undergo very, very rigorous courses that they must pass to become captains of various type levels of vessels.
Well, give me an example. What type of training would they be getting? Would they have to
Oh,
operate a ferry back and forth from New Jersey?
Operating, just getting a captain's license in general can be a very rigorous course. It takes about 6 months to get it. You have to go through different trainings, through the Coast Guard and so forth, and you have to operate these vessels that they're operating, and they have to show proficiency. And there's scored course that they must go through. But they're finding that it's not so much the pilots that are not getting the proper training, it's that the pilots are really being pushed to the limits as to what they're to do.
Similar to a doctor who's just pushed to just take care of patient after patient and doesn't seem to get to sleep in the hospital, that type of situation.
That's right. And also, you know, boats, whether it be a ferry or a small pleasure boat, they don't just stop.
No.
I mean, they don't
It's
stop.
like driving on moving pavement is the analogy,
That's
really.
the analogy. They don't just stop.
Yeah.
And a lot of these boats, these ferries that have to come in to pick up people, are on such rigorous schedules that they're coming in too fast. And if you take a look at at all the accidents that happened in the last 10 years, there's been at least 4 significant ferry accidents that happened in the last 10 years. Almost every single one of them, if you really look at it, if the speed was more controlled, a lot of the injuries could have been lessened.
Now, I think with this last ferry accident that just occurred, the operator was operating at a speed higher than 10 miles per hour. Am I correct? Or
It was operating at a speed that I believe was way too high for given the circumstances. And circumstances, you see, every circumstance is going to be different because the wake in those areas are different. And the witnesses that have come forward have said that there were wakes that hit that boat. Given the wake level that was there at the time that boat came in, 10 miles per hour and up was too fast.
Okay. You're a passenger, you buy your ticket.
Right.
And on the back of the ticket, any waivers, anything that you have to be concerned with as an attorney?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
Okay, but those waivers, you know, you're given 20 minutes. You buy the ticket, 20 minutes later, you're in the destination that you're going to. Those waivers usually don't hold water.
Okay, and especially if it's a child.
Especially
you're bringing
if
a child on board.
Because a child can't waive their rights,
Right.
as you know.
Okay, so you're in the unfortunate position of getting into an accident on a ferry.
Okay.
Whether it crashes or something happens to you.
Okay.
Okay. What's the first thing that you would expect that person to do? Obviously, you're not going to really see them until after they get out of the hospital or something. What do you want them to take pictures? Do you want them to maybe take an accident, do an accident report? What do you usually expect?
Well, obviously, if the person is well enough to do an incident or accident report, they should do that, just to report that person's been involved in that accident. Hold on to your stub, though. You want to hold on to your stub because you don't want the ferry owner or the boat owner to claim that you weren't on the boat at the time.
Is the stub actually dated so that you can show that it's this particular day that you were on, like a MetroCard type of thing?
It sometimes is, depends upon which ferry and which. You have private ferries, you have public ferries. It really depends.
Okay.
Good
So all
question.
right. So now you got your ticket. You're able to prove you were on the ferry, so they
Right.
can't deny that.
Okay.
What's the next thing you usually
Well,
have?
if you're injured, you should go to the hospital.
Okay.
Get yourself checked out. That's the first thing you should do.
and at the
obviously.
hospital, you make sure they tell them what happened to you, or do you just
You know,
tell
the
them,
hospital,
fix me?
as an attorney,
Yeah.
the hospital reports are extremely important, and a lot of times the hospital will report things that actually don't happen. So you want to make sure you tell the doctor and the people who treat you, especially at triage, that you're involved in an accident on a boat.
Okay, well, listen, we got a lot more to get to, so don't go anywhere, all right? We have to take a quick break, but coming up, we'll continue our discussing ferry accidents and the law. We'll be right back.
Hands can do incredible things. Now they can even help save a life with hands-only CPR. If you see an adult suddenly collapse, just call 911, then push hard and fast in the center of the chest until help arrives. Learn more at handsonlycpr.org.
There is also a very attractive extended warranty option that includes free service and parts for the next 5 years. But there's no need for you to get that. You failed to get the test you needed at the doctor that would have detected disease early enough where it could have been treated. So you won't be around in 2 years to see him grow up. which means the warranty would be useless. Okay, sign here, please.
For a list of tests every man should have, go to ahrq.gov.
Welcome back. I'm your host, David Lesh. We at Today's Verdict want to hear from you, so send us your questions or comments to davidlesh@bronxnet.org, and you can also follow us on Twitter at Today's Verdict. On today's show, we've been discussing the complexities of boating and ferry accidents here in New York. Sharing his legal expertise in the area of maritime law is attorney Michael Lamonsoff of the Law Office of Michael Lamonsoff. Michael, well, we're not really talking about maritime law. Maritime law, you're really talking about some federal, navigation of the Pacific and the Atlantic. We're really talking about negligence here, am I correct? Or am I wrong?
No,
you're the expert.
You're actually wrong. Maritime law actually does, well, you're correct and you're wrong. Maritime law does actually come into play. What happens in these cases is this. When there's an accident like there was recently, okay, what happens is the ferry owner or the owner of the boat who may or may not be responsible of due to negligence. What they will do is they'll make a motion in a federal court to try to bring maritime law in play. And what they'll do is they'll try to make a motion asking the court to say that all damages of anybody that's been injured on the ship is limited to the asset of the ship. In essence, what they're saying is they're limiting damage to whatever the ship costs.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well,
so that's what brings it into maritime law.
Okay, but is this a state court action or is it a federal court action?
Well, what happens is plaintiff attorneys like myself will bring the cases in state court. Okay, the ferry owners or the boat owners, depending upon who it is, will bring a federal action to limit the liability of their boat to the cost of the boat, and they do it under maritime law.
And that becomes then part of federal court, am I correct?
That becomes part of federal court.
Okay,
it becomes a separate and distinct action from the underlying lawsuit.
Any issues with that as compared to state court, rather be in federal? Not that you have much of a choice. Federal, state, does it really matter to you?
Well, the ferries and the boat owners want to be in federal court because they want to minimize their exposure. They don't want to be, litigating cases throughout New York State. Yeah. Okay? So they want to limit it to federal court. And also in state courts, you're more likely to get a jury than you are in federal court. So, as a plaintiff's attorney, I'd rather bring it in state court.
Okay. Are these cases consolidated into one big case, or is it, is it all tried together, or is it separately, really?
That's a good question. Again, the procedure is, what usually will happen is that the ferry owner or the boat owner will bring an action in federal court to limit their liability. It's a procedure that they use to bring it in federal court to limit their damage exposure.
Okay, now we were talking offset. You have a boat yourself, am I correct?
I certainly do.
So, you understand the complexities of driving a boat, am I correct?
I sure do.
Tell me.
Well, the complexities have become much more complex. I don't know if that's a term of art, but in the last 10 years, the Hudson has become far more dangerous. It's a much more dangerous place than it was 10 years ago, before 9/11, which is kind of strange that it's become so much more dangerous. And the reason is because there's been such a huge proliferation of ferries and ferry boating on the Hudson. And it's become so bad that dock owners, Chelsea Piers, for example, dinner boat owners all along the Hudson have been complaining. There have been injuries, there have been property damage, and there's been a lot of litigation because of this. And the problem is that there has been absolutely no legislation to control the amount of what's going on.
What type of legislation would you be looking for?
Well, 5 mile per hour zones near shipping, near piers, near Chelsea piers or dinner boats, or where people are enjoying themselves along the piers. Absolutely.
Okay, let's give some advice to some of the viewers. Someone who's watching and takes a ferry back and forth every once in a while.
Sure.
What's the best advice you can give them? A seatbelt? I mean, what are you going to tell them when they're taking these ferries back and forth to work?
I think the most important thing is stay seated.
Okay.
Stay seated, especially when the boat comes in. A lot of people get up. They see that land's in sight. They're ready to get off. Stay seated. Don't get up. That's where most of the injuries occur, because when a boat hits a pier, people fall. People could hurt themselves. The best advice I can give them is just stay seated.
What seems to be the most common injury that that usually occurs?
Well, besides the real horrendous ones, which are the ones near the impact sites, you know, you have people with back issues and neck issues. I mean, it's same thing. It's acceleration, deceleration accident.
I would assume like stay away from the acceleration sites. You know, maybe stay in the middle of the boat someplace.
That would actually be good advice as well, because you know the points of impacts are where the people are most injured.
Okay.
Obviously.
We don't have too much time, but
Sure.
in the negotiation, because obviously I know and you know, not every case can be tried, right? So you only try so many cases. A lot of the cases are settled. What seems to be the best way to get these cases moving? Is it injury? Is it purely the negligence part? How do you seem to move these files?
Well, you know what? These cases usually are pretty sexy. They don't want, you know, the municipal governments, and also the private shipping companies, they don't want these in the public eye. So really, it's they who really push these cases along.
They do.
Yeah, they do. These cases move.
Any success stories you want to talk about? Any good cases that you like?
It's kind of confidential.
It is, okay.
Yes.
But are you happy with the way you've been able to...
The settlements, you know, I represent people in plane disasters, and it's almost, in some ways, I know it's not as disastrous, because most of the people I've represented are families of people who have died.
Right, because plane, you're usually not surviving it.
That's right.
Right? So you have a wrongful death claim.
Right.
But when you're dealing with the ferry accidents, although I think there have been a couple of deaths, obviously.
There's been a couple of deaths also.
Right.
But the damages, you know, are of course different, but they are in some ways similar, because these companies do want to keep them out of the papers. They want to get them settled, and they usually offer far more money than they do in normal settlements.
All right. Some last tips to somebody who, you know, they're involved in an accident and they're not too sure what to do. Give them some advice.
Well, like I said, the most important thing is to make sure that it's reported if you can. Make a report. There's going to be police at the pier. Make a report. They'll know who's there. Go to them. Go to the hospital. Tell the hospital. When you get to the hospital, make sure you're very clear on how you got injured. Keep any stubs you have, any receipts that you have. If you have any witnesses that saw you there, write those people's names down and make sure that they're there for you if you need them. Really, that's it.
All right. Well, and this is some closing, just so we can finally wrap it up a little bit. You're on trial on this type of case, and the, you know, a lot of the viewers, you know, they get very nervous when they're on trial. It happens all the time. But I think when you're dealing with ferry accidents, you're not necessarily thinking that, you know, you yourself can be thought of to blame for any of this. But are there times where the boat owner or the ferry owner switches the liability back onto the passenger? Can the passenger ever be responsible for this kind of accident?
Passengers can be in certain situations, but none of the ones that we've been seeing. You're talking about passengers that may try to get off the boat too early and fall, or there may be some comparative negligence. As you know, comparative negligence actually does come into effect. It does. But for the most part, in maritime law, which does apply in these type of accidents, negligence is inferred when a boat hits a dock, and we don't have to worry about comparative negligence of the passengers.
Well, that's great advice, and Michael, I'm hoping you come back and tell us how you do in some of the cases.
Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. Well, that's all for tonight. It's time to deliberate. I'd like to thank both of our guests for joining us, and of course, you for watching. Remember, if there's a legal issue or topic you would like to see on the show, email me at davidlesh@bronxnet.org. And until we see you again, always remember, know your rights, know your issues, reach your verdict. I'll see you next time.